All right, so I want to talk about reforms in justice and the mass incarceration problem we have. And I was just watching a Democracy Now! Interview with this woman. While she has good intentions, she has, however, gone with that unicorns and rainbow, and we hope that if we talk enough with them and we get the victims of the violence perpetrated, that somehow will come up with a some miraculous change, and if not, then that's just unfeasible, and it is fantasy. It is mythical, fantastic thinking. It doesn't address the causes, uh, and because for each and every one of us, we have different reasons for why we do violent actions, and also it doesn't address the system that causes this violence to happen, and that's because people, when we're living outside of a prison cell, of a jail, many of us live. Many of us, I'm sure, have felt, because I know I have, and I know I've talked to dozens of others about their own lives and so on and so forth. And one of the things that's common is that we all have had this thought that it's like, even though we're outside, we still feel like we're kind of locked in, like this metaphorical prison, because we're stymied and we're stifled, or there just doesn't seem to be any way to reach the aspirations that we dreamed of having, and then even the aspirations that is fostered and promoted seems to be, eh, you know, you know, uh, I've talked about this, being famous, being wealthy, being a dreamboat, or being a sex god or sex goddess, or you know, uh, you know, uh, that's these are. It's so limited, it's so venal, and there's a lot of people that I think consider this, and the system has it so that it's really rather depressing, and like, I know there are people that want people feel like they want more substance filled aspirations. We all know that money. Well, many of us know that money isn't doesn't bring happiness. Money doesn't having all sorts of material goods isn't doesn't fulfill us, and that's what I mean. We want fulfillment, and we want to be excited. We want to be able to look at upon a new day with excitement, and being glad to be alive, and seeing a new day, and we want surprise, we want uh, excitement, and that's not where we're getting, and they're just it just seems like a cell, uh, and it's impacted by societal, political, by laws, rules, and regulations. There are uh, common, uh, common laws that are universal common laws that everybody accepts because it is the common natural laws. But we get so much others that are basically don't serve anything but to basically make us feel like we have to jump through hurdles, or it's purposely placed there to keep us in place, and so on and so forth. so so that the entirety of the system has to be reworked, and it has to be done radically, and it has to be done in a way that promotes equality, promotes true aspirations, and that involves true education that is that can be peer reviewed. Um uh, you know, uh, it involves honesty in history. Uh, no matter how it may how uh, depressingly horrible it may be, and it requires that we don't allow predatory criminals, con people, to get into government office. And if they do get into office, there's got to be real accountability, and and a and actions that we can take immediately to get them out and have them pay. Uh, and that's equality. So those are just a few of the things that we as a society, as a community, need to address, and that will drastically decrease uh, the impulses for violence. Um, but as for mass incarceration, I agree that we shouldn't be sending people for jaywalking, or for like uh, like using drugs. That doesn't really hurt anybody but the person doing the drugs. But then, if we do make the corrections, less people will be inclined to go do use drugs or to drink heavily until they basically injure themselves. Uh, People won't be looking for excitement in ways like being a um, going into hedonistic avenues, like being a sadist, or being a what the hell is the other one? I can't think of the word, but basically you're into pain and so on and so forth, um, and we won't and there won't be people won't be looking for other destructive ways of feeling alive, and such as nymphomania is basically that. Yeah, it's a mental and emotional condition brought about because of devaluing, and that's and that's a societal, as well as it's a societal and a systematic cause. So, anyways, going back to mass incarceration, we need to have a new prison system, because we do need prisons, but we need to rethink how we have the prisons. So rather than having a prison with walls and then buildings with jail cells inside those walls, what we should have, is an open air wall prison with dormitories. That people can just walk in and out of, and we need to set aside buildings so that the prisoners are responsible for themselves, so that they produce their own clothing, they produce their own food. Okay, they have learning material and the tools to carry it out, right? And so this basically, we're not just importing things into the prison to keep these people so that they just sit around either pumping weights or getting into fights with each other, or arguing. Uh, now they have to consider staying alive, and they're forced to learn things and do for themselves, and this will teach them how to, and this will force them, and you give them tools to learn how to do so. All right, and they have to work together. Now, also, you allow them to produce things. So now, and produce things for themselves, but also produce things that can be taken out and sold to the general public. And this way, it also pays for their incarceration, and you also set aside an account so that with each prisoner, and you keep track, and they all get equal amounts set aside into an account under their names. So when they do get out, they have money, but only for those who are willing to do the work inside to keep themselves and keep themselves alive. So if you're just gonna go in there and you're gonna be and you're not gonna contribute, and even though you have all the resources there and so on and so forth, and you just want to be an asshole, and or if you want to try to boss others around to do, you have you have cameras, you have you have ways to with the technology we have now, we could actually know exactly by for instance, you could make the entire ground filled with sensors, and because everybody walks a certain way, and how they place. You can use thermographic and optical cameras in conjunction with in conjunction with all sorts of other, like everybody has different thermal registration. So all of that, so we could keep exact track of who is who at every minute, and obviously you have it so that everything that they say is caught individually, and every action they do is caught individually, and because you know exactly who's who and so on and so forth, without and you could include facial recognition and all that other stuff, but that's just an extra redundancy. But with just how you place your body weight, how you walk, your thermal signature, and all that other stuff, and then with if the president has to keep a mic on, uh, and then you also have mics placed all over the place. Uh, so even if they don't wear the mic, wear their own personal microphones, which they're supposed to, you can still catch it, and because each person has a distinct a distinct audio signature, so all of that will keep tracking them, so we know exactly who's contributing, who's not, who's being obstinate, who's being a bullying asshole, and so on and so forth. And then for those ones that refuse and they're actually being bullies and they're actually attacking people, then you do have another section where the with the threat, knowing that if you do this, you're gonna go into an actual jail cell for a period of time, and that's the consequences of you not doing your part. And the other one is that if money is set aside for when they get out and they're learning new skills and they have to be responsible for themselves and they're allowed to use their creativity, that serves more to getting them so that when they do get out, there's far less chance of them coming back. And when they leave, they have a sense of accomplishment. They leave with skills. and and they are providing to the community. That's a far better way. And as far as guards go, the guards don't actually go within the walls. They basically patrol on the walls and through electronic measures to watch, and then when they do have to go in, they go in to get the troublemakers and put them in the cell and tell them this is how long you stay in there, and when the time is up, you can come out, and if you can't do what you're supposed to do for your own good, then you go back in. And and after a certain period, or if they commit really egregious violence, then they don't get out again, and they're stuck in their cells, and the other prisoners who are doing they will feed them through the bars, and so on and so forth. But basically, these people won't get any credit, and also being sent into those, and because you'll have actual evidence that can't be manufactured. Well, I can't say can't be, but it makes it virtually almost impossible to manufacture, because the guards will not be allowed to go in unless there's actual evidence, which all those sensors would show with absolute certainty, and they can be reviewed by an independent source that they're actually doing that, not connected, a civilian independent board. Or you could even have, for redundancy, you can have two civilian boards that with the authority to look at it and say, oh, no, you guys, you actually did, and then any guy that does something like that gets sent gets arrested. And so these are the type of solutions we can do that would actually solve the issue. Of course, in this current system, that's not likely to happen. But those are the things. Those are practical, real world applications that would present a true solution to violent criminals. Because the only people that should be going into jail are the truly violent criminals, and I consider I consider you know extortion. I consider what they call white collar to be violent, and it's because it is violent because it's oftentimes slow and a very long process of violence that impacts thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions. So I think those are the most egregious violence. And and if anybody, I don't think any sane person can argue with me that you know when your politicians make policies and stuff like that, which affects thousands to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to millions, that's truly egregious. When businesses, the so-called legitimate businesses like Monsanto and Dow Chemicals and ExxonMobil, when they commit these sort of crimes, which which the top holding shareholders are directly responsible and culpable for, that's egregious. More egregious than say somebody who accidentally killed somebody under manslaughter, or even somebody that killed somebody in a heat of anger. Uh, not the premeditated type of that's egregious, but even even that is less egregious than those with legitimacy, uh, who's who's committing uh, who's committing violence to in a multiplicity, uh, plural plural multiplicity that just that's that's stellar. It's cosmic violence, level of cosmic violence that it's so those are the ones that really should be going to jail, and those are the ones that should be put away into solitary confinement and or even put to death because that just that okay. I'm not going to get any further into it, but those are my things I suggest that we do.